Sakara is here, and first, before we start, I shouldn't jump ahead too fast. Um, Before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Samish, and Semiahmoo people, who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We pay respect to their elders and past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all events. I missed one sentence. Sorry about that. This is very small. So we will call to order, and I'll turn it over to Sakara to give us a pyramid update.
Hello, everyone. Good, mostly familiar faces. I'm not sure how much time I have to talk with y'all. Can somebody give me a time check?
Jill, did you have something in mind?
Hi, Sakara. And I don't probably keep it brief. We've got a pretty busy agenda today.
Okay. We'll have time to look at the impact report.
I have not.
Okay. Well, I will be quick, but you should. I saw that Jill sent this out to everyone to have some time with it. We still have a few months with you. So if there are important things that we need to come back and follow up on, I'm sure we can make time to get any questions answered for you all. But when we heard that you were going to be talking about our work together, we wanted to make sure that you had some information that was helpful to just kind of give a review and some context of the accomplishments of this communications effort. So we have sent over a packet that has an overview of the origins of this work together between the Pyramid team and the IPRTF task force, which includes the original goals for our work, the audiences that we would focus on for these initial efforts, and the general approach that we would take to the work together to meet those specific goals. And we used a good chunk of funding, as you can see throughout the deck, for specific advertising efforts to really boost and promote the messaging of the IPRTF and the broader work being done by Whatcom County government and the community. And so the deck includes some impact metrics. I think it's great to just look at, the first overall, which is that had a very strong impression in this first year and some months of intentional communications efforts for your content to be seen over 1 million times with an additional audience of nearly 6 million people is really significant and should be seen as nothing as an accomplishment. We would say these are absolutely successful numbers for the investment that was made for this effort. And then you'll have information about the kind of main campaigns that we did. We started off with message testing and came with and learned outcomes from that informed our work going forward, which was what messaging resonated most with folks, what brought them to it, so that we could use that as a baseline going forward. We did a town hall promotion this year that was also extremely successful in just getting the word out, starting to familiarize people with the various roles and groups that are working on things and what those specific efforts are. And most importantly, opportunities to engage with government. And we did a general awareness and education campaign, increasing awareness of the need for the work, as well as the IPRTF's progress and approach to transforming the criminal, legal, and behavioral health systems. And we had an ongoing tick of non-paid social media as well. And so when you're thinking about, well, gosh, we may not have the budgets that we've had before, you can see that non-paid social media and communications is absolutely worth the effort. These are extremely successful numbers. And of course, the op-eds reached a massive audience and just drawing attention to the issues that all communities are facing in the state of Washington right now and what Whatcom County's approach is, as well as reaching those right at home. And then we just included some key takeaways, which is that there is significant appetite for communications to community about what government is doing and what coalitions within government are doing to make communities better, to deliver on the vision for a better community for our children. And there needs to be just a continued cultivation of communications. You have to repeat a message, significant number of times for it to really start to sink in for people and it to not be such an insider baseball conversation. And so just continuing to cultivate that work to grow your coalition of communicators within government and various departments and agencies, and also outside of government with community coalitions who are focused on and committed to the very same things that you're working on. So I would say that is the very quickest overview, and happy to have any time for discussion or questions that you may have.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks, Takara. That was a great summary of the work that we have done and are doing. So let's open that up to questions or comments or anything anybody wants to say about Pyramid's work. I think it's awesome. Jill.
Thank you. I just want to remind the steering committee that Sakar and Emily will be attending the full task force in November and doing a bit of training for the full task force on how to keep this work going into the future and crafting messages and getting the word out to the community. I know it's a busy time for everyone. I hope folks can attend. And I was thinking of also extending the invitation out, Executive Sidhu, thank you for being here, to other communications teams in the county, such as the health department's PIO team, and they're welcome to attend to get the benefit of that training as well.
Thanks, Jill. Mike.
Thanks, Barry, and thanks, Sakara, for the presentation. It's good to hear good results, and I'm pleased that so much of it was positive. And I know that you have the general understanding to know that those numbers mean good things. I appreciate that. I don't know this stuff. One thing I'm curious about with your kind of level of knowledge and the decisions that were made on the things that we talked about. What opportunities, other than sustaining some of the work, which you're talking about, I know you're going to talk to our full task force about, but if you had to pick an area where maybe people had questions, or where we didn't saturate as much as we could, or we're trying to get across something very, I don't know, policy wonky, and it could benefit from further work, in your opinion, if you had to pick one or two items that maybe didn't translate as well or could use more work, what would those be?
So thank you for that question. And we will actually, as a part of the training, we will at the end of training be going through some specific recommendations for everybody. But some things that come top to mind, I would say that it's kind of a two-part answer. In terms of development of messaging to get things to final approval and publication, I think that the team that you have is so committed to accurate messaging that was not an issue, actually. getting things to translate from wonky to less wonky was not necessarily an issue. The caveat to that is, though, community does have questions, and they are engaging on social media and asking follow-up questions, or or perhaps making comments that could be redirected to additional information. And so one of the things we have been working on with you all, and will continue to work on with you all to the end of the year, and we'll probably leave you with, because it's a process heavy step, is what is your engagement online going to be? Because social media is really like long running television that comes into your home every day. When you are posting something on social media, it's like you're stepping into wherever somebody is and saying something to them. And so they're going to respond, and they expect you to then respond back. And so figuring out what you respond to, how you respond, when you are redirecting, when to engage, not to engage, and what to say, I understand is a process to figure out what the policies and procedures are going to be for that. But that would be that is for us a top of mind recommendation of, it is worth it to figure out what that process and procedure is going to be, and who is going to be responsible for communicating with folks, because that will naturally grow your audience as well. People see that you are engaging with them, and they appreciate that. They know that it's a place that they can not just go to for information, and you're very recognizable on social media with your branding, but that they can ask a question and they will get an answer.
I just want to thank you for that answer, but just underscoring how reciprocal it is. And I remember when we were first talking about, well, we need to get our message out, but that's not just it, is it? It is far more that you're starting a conversation. And if you start it, you better be around to keep the conversation going, or you lose your audience. And that's a big takeaway from what you're telling me today and what you're sharing. And I think is good food for thought, Barry, and all of us in steering and in the task force, because that really does change the nature a little bit of how we have been working with the public at large. So thank you for your thoughtful answer. I appreciate that.
Executive Sadhu.
Yeah, I think over the last 2 years, one of the things I have noticed is that the community is engaged, or people who are engaged, they're emotional, and they sincerely want to bring a change. They really sincerely want to do things for our community. But what is missing is the clarity of what a county level or local level work can be done and what is not in our hands. There is a big paintbrush that county should be able to change the criminal justice system. And that has been so hard to bang your head on. And when one tries to make an answer explaining, he's labeled as avoiding the issue, coming up with excuses. There is really limit to at a one county level that things that we can incrementally change, put it this way. But people are expecting a wholesale throw away the old book, write a new book, put it this way. I felt that we should do some communication on this, educate people that what are the jurisdiction of a county prosecutor, what are the jurisdiction of local judges, what is the jurisdiction of a sheriff's department, and council. And then comes the county executive. But nevertheless, these are public defender, right? These are 4 or 5 entities which make our local criminal justice system. But we are microcosm of a bigger system which sets these priorities and sets these rules. And I feel that we should do some work on clarifying to public. Their expectations are sometimes unwieldy. Thank you.
If I may, I'm honored that you're here, and I have a recommendation that I think is appropriate for your office, the level of your office, which is that we understand in smaller communities where perhaps your county council, is staff is part-time, or things are at a smaller scale. Communications tends to be reactive, and there isn't a lot of asset or investment for a higher level, coordinated proactive communication effort. People often need to be reminded how a bill becomes a law, so to speak, right? Who is responsible for what? That takes a broader umbrella communication strategy and effort that we believe, given where Whatcom County is right now, the unprecedented work that you all are doing to transform community, that like you're ahead of the curve on the work, but admittedly, and you all are well behind the curve on communications, right? And so that takes another level of investment and coordination, and is absolutely worth your time to cultivate that coalition between those prongs that you mentioned. Who is responsible for what? So that you have a pro communication effort for your entire community that lets them know who is responsible for what. How are these tentacles all related to each other? So you don't look like you're skirting the issue, but you look like you're just redirecting folks to another branch of the communication effort that can absorb their concern, that can explain how change is being made. And I think one of the things that we have to be really just kind of realistic about is that the IPRTF, given where it is at in the structure of government, can only communicate so much and can only do so much with its communication efforts. And so, where does that growth and possibility really lie? The absolute hunger and thirst for Whatcom County to be communicating is completely palpable to us, that you have nothing but opportunity going forward to really amplify this effort and bring community along.
Yeah, I just want to add one more line to that is that if we extricate ourselves from and look as an outsider from outside looking at Whatcom County, I really believe and I feel that we have done a lot of work in all different areas. Even we have been bold enough to admit our shortcomings and actually invite dialogue on all kinds of controversial issues and some bordering on misinformation, but we listen to that as well. And I think that is something we should be proud, all of. I'm not me in part of that, but everybody else who has been working on this for the last 2 years should be proud that how much work RPRTF has been able to do and involve a lot of other people. Let's not get it negated by impossible things which are not in our jurisdiction. Thank you. I'll stop here.
And I would echo what Executive Sidhu said. I saw that firsthand when I was kind of on a MacArthur Grant tour back in 2018. I went to several cities across the country, and we were already being recognized as way ahead of the curve. Not necessarily on communications, of course. Everybody seemed to have that at the bottom of their list when we were engaging with other jurisdictions, that this is what we're probably the worst at. That and data, we're always on the bottom. So it is true that Whatcom County is doing a great job, and it is doing a great job, I think, because of this group. This group was formed to kind of lead that path forward, and I feel really good about the work we've done, and hearing that, from all those various people across the country was very rewarding. Anyhow,
well, I can say that we've been nothing but not only impressed but inspired. As you know, we've worked with other communities in and outside of Washington State on the very issues that you are working on, and you're setting a precedent and a blueprint that I think is nothing but beneficial, not just for Whatcom County, but for other communities to be able to look to and see what is really possible.
Yeah. Well, I think the way everybody has responded in these last basically 5 years since the last failure in 2017, I think has been super focused, super positive, and we opened our eyes to a lot of new thinking. So thank you.
Well, it's been an honor to support. So thank you all very much for your time. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Sakara. Anything else to leave us with before we move on?
Just what I said. It has truly been an honor to work with you all. You have been one of the best clients that we have ever worked on for this kind of a communications effort. And really cannot encourage you enough to absolutely keep going with this, because you will continue to see the benefit of communicating with folks. So thank you.
Okay, thanks. Jack?
I just want to add, Sakara, because for those of you that don't know, Barry, Stephen, and I, for a while, we were meeting with you every week, and we're still checking in. You really rock, Sakara. You have a passion for this. I love your stories about criminal justice in California, what you see here, and your aerial view has been really helpful. You've been great. Thank you so much. Just wanted
Thank
to
you all.
make sure everybody else knew that you have a passion for this work, and I appreciate working with you.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
agree. You've been more of a partner than a consultant. So I echo what Jack said. Okay, we're gonna
All right.
change
Thank
up.
you.
Thank you, Sakara. Have a great day. We're gonna change up the order a little bit because we have Stark here to accompany Maya as we discuss the public defender's budget. They wanted to bring this to our attention. So, Stephen, did you want to introduce this?
Well, I don't have a lot to say other than we've had a couple of mentions in prior meetings of the strain on the attorney staff at the public defender's office, especially with regard to being qualified to defend Class A felonies, the most serious crimes charged, and just general churn in the staff that puts the public defender's office at a real problem point. And when they're at a problem point, the whole flow of case resolution through the court system also becomes a problem for us. And so there have been this is not a Whatcom County only problem, but it does live here with a vengeance. And so there have been some later developments that Maya brought to my attention, and I just thought the larger group needed to be aware of those. And so I'm glad both Maya and Stark can be here to brief us on the situation.
Okay, well, whichever of you would like to go first, I'll leave it up to you. Maya, Stark?
Yeah, I'll go. Thank you for asking me to come here. I'm not at all sure that this is the right forum to lay some of this stuff out, but I think it does. The stress and the strain on this office and on the street with the private attorneys that do conflict cases definitely does slow down the flow of criminal cases and contributes to greater levels of incarceration. So I think it is probably in the wheelhouse of this body. I don't want to interject too much doom and gloom here today, but I'm going to say that I have not previously seen the level of crisis in indigent defense in this county that we're experiencing presently. I got an email from Melissa Rodriguez earlier, or I guess it was maybe last week, regarding the fact that there are no private contract lawyers basically accepting cases anymore, which means if we conflict cases out of this office because we have a current kind of conflict of interest, they have nowhere to go. And that problem has reared its head before. I think in May, there was a series of articles in the Herald and the Cascadia Daily about unrepresented individuals in the jail, and that problem has not only not gone away, in my view, it's gotten worse. And we have people currently incarcerated, and the line seems to be getting longer and longer to be able to get a lawyer outside of this office. And, you know, that not only affects our ability to get representation for people that we conflict, but it also takes away an important mechanism that we've had available to us graciously by the county executive to overflow cases from time to time in order to keep our lawyers within standards. And, you know, I'm unfortunately faced with the conundrum now of, you know, either overloading my lawyers or sending cases out of the office and allowing people to go for lengths of time unrepresented. And I don't favor either of those alternatives. It's a devil's alternative for someone in my position. We've tried to solve the problem, and I'm just speaking outside of the office right now. We've tried to solve the problem by the county's hiring of an individual to work through assigned counsel to take conflict and overflow cases. But unfortunately, that lawyer is not qualified to take the most serious cases under the standards. And the decision has been made, I guess, was made without my participation to hire another person in that capacity. And frankly, I'm very skeptical that there's going to be an ability to hire somebody that can take the most serious cases. So ironically, if we're conflicted or if we have to overflow the most serious of cases, which I am loath to do, we always try and opt to keep the most serious cases in-house. But if I have to get rid of those cases, they are not going to have anywhere to go, you know, unless the county is successful at hiring somebody who's qualified. We have submitted. I was somewhat good-naturedly chastised by Satpal at the last department head meeting for our mid-budget request, and he tempered that by comments about how he encourages department heads to ask for their dream. And I wouldn't exactly say that our mid-budget requests have been asking for our dream, but they would go a long ways towards solving some of the problems that I'm talking about, namely the overflow or overage cases, but also would address some current issues that we have in the office. And you know, some of those issues are, you know, I as a director, you know, who am supposed to be running this office, you know, have a full caseload, including 6 homicides or attempted homicide cases. And so the amount of time that I can spend on administration over here is, you know, severely impacted by that. We have an assistant chief deputy who is our district court supervisor, who is on more than a full caseload. Standards require supervisors to be on reduced or off caseload. So that's not a good situation. And we've seen, you know, extreme growth recently in the therapeutic courts in terms of the numbers of people in there. And so we're having to reduce the caseloads that we can assign lawyers who are doing therapeutic courts. You know, and the long and the short of it is, you know, we've got these standards that have been adopted by the Supreme Court. They are hard line ceiling standards. At the felony level, it's 150 felonies a year. And for the longest time, this office has been running at the red line, right up to whatever the cap is, sometimes even a little bit over it. And it causes us to have a complete inability to deal with the inevitables that come down the path, the FMLAs, the maternity leaves. And we've had 3 lawyers now in the last 12 months, felony level lawyers, depart the office, at least in part because of their frustration with their caseload. And every time a lawyer leaves the office, you know, we have to not only go out and try and recruit somebody that's qualified to take those cases, but we have to recount those cases as they are assigned to a new lawyer, and put those numbers in that new lawyer's case count to determine, whether they are in compliance with standards or not. And we just this week had a felony level lawyer that we hired from King County that had 16 years of experience in King County. He came up here about 2 years ago, Maya. Is that about what it was? And he resigned the office and is leaving us well over 100 cases to have to try and reassign or not reassign and overflow to no one. And this is simply not a sustainable situation over here that we can have, where we simply do not have the ability to deal with these cases and comply with standards in-house, and we have nowhere to send these people outside of the office to gain representation. So I think it's fair to say that we are in dire straits over here. I think if we can increase our staff in this office, we can certainly eliminate the overflow, and perhaps provide for these inevitable things like FMLA and departures a little bit better than what we do now. In addition to that, I know that Maya likes to talk about how the practice has changed over the years, and it certainly has. We know that virtually every law enforcement agency, I think in Whatcom County, has body-worn cameras now that require hours and hours and hours of review as part of our representation to assess those cases. We've seen a huge increase in the number of calendars that our lawyers have to attend. And I think that happened mostly because of COVID, and it doesn't seem like it's going away. And all of that has created more work and more time for the cases. And that's not strictly speaking related to the standards. The standards don't address how much work particular cases take or how the practice may change. But they do affect our employees' satisfaction over here and our ability to retain them. Basically, I just want to let this body know, and I'm going to throw it over to Maya to supplement what I've had to say. But I think, both inside this office and on the street in Whatcom County presently, there's a real crisis in terms of indigent defense. And I believe that it's only going to get worse because the ABA recently came out with a caseload study that is trickling through the powers that be down in Seattle and eventually in Olympia. I believe that they will be adopted in some fashion down the road, and those standards are going to reduce the capacities that we can take even further than they are now. And I think that we better be thinking about that change and how that's going to affect this office down the road, because if we can't keep up with the standards the way they are now, we certainly are not going to be able to keep up with them the way they're going to be very shortly. So with that, I will let Maya supplement, and I will tell you before she does that I have a case that I have to make an appearance on the criminal calendar on Zoom as soon as I'm given the heads up by the jail, and so I may have to duck out of this meeting. But until then, I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody may have.
Thank you. And Stark really touched on almost all of the high points. I think losing the Class A felony, another Class A felony on Monday of this week, is a really difficult situation. He's got 18 people in the jail currently, with lots of cases, many people with multiple cases and many people with very, very serious cases. 3 of those are homicides, Class A sex offenses, serious Class A felonies, because, he was one of our most experienced attorneys. And I would attribute his departure to overwhelm entirely. He's a career public defender. He's taking a break. He doesn't know what he's going to go do. He just needs a break that bad. And that doesn't even consider the other 10 people who have sex offenses that he represents that are out in our community and all the other folks too. So we're today really, I kind of speechless and really unclear about what we're going to do for these folks in the immediate sense, because this month's case assignments will be severely impacted by the reassignment of these in custody folks. And the court is giving pressure on cases that are 24 months old or older. And I don't think across the board that that's unreasonable, but we are seeing pushback from the court on cases like this that are having to be transferred to multiple attorneys because the attorneys keep leaving, and that pressure contributes to why they're feeling overwhelmed. So it's pretty difficult. So thanks for caring about this. I think it really does impact the number of people who are incarcerated and the number of people going through our system and the rate at which we can process cases. So it's complicated, and we're here to answer questions.
All right. Thank you, Maya and Stark. We'll take questions. Jack?
Just a quick one. First of all, Stark, thanks for being here. Good to see you. And Maya, thank you always. She's executive seducer. I'll be really brief, and Stark, just because you're always here, Maya's been a wonderful resource and advocate for your office with the task force. I just want to communicate that. Yeah. One question I had, I heard what you said. How bad is it in the jails? If I'm in the jail, I send a kite. A kite is a transmission. I want to talk to a public defender. When do I know I get screened, but is it taking days, weeks? Like what's the turnaround time to actually talk to a lawyer?
Well, we have policies in our office to make immediate or almost immediate contact with people who get appointed to this office. So I'm not worried about, that becomes sort of a employment situation. If I find out that a client is being booked into the jail and not being contacted for a week or two, then that's a situation that we have to deal with the individual lawyer over here. And as I said, we have policies that we make immediate or almost immediate contact with people in the jail. The problem is going to come, Jack, when we either conflict or overflow a case out. And Dave Reynolds, who's the head of assigned counsel, who's, by the way, last day is tomorrow, and I'm not sure when his replacement is coming on board, has had an increasingly difficult time getting people to accept cases on the street. And the reasons for that, is anybody's guess. It may be that people don't believe that the compensation is sufficient to, interest them. It may be that there just are not enough lawyers around that are interested in doing this work anymore. I don't know. Historically, that wasn't the case. Historically, there was 10, 15 lawyers. I was one of them in private practice that would take court-appointed cases. And that just isn't the case anymore. So when we overflow or conflict a case, it could be weeks. It could be potentially months before somebody has somebody appointed to represent them. And as I've mentioned, I think at least a few forums, my view of that is that it's a liability issue for the county for people to be sitting in jail unrepresented. But beyond that, it's just not acceptable in our present day society we're not. This shouldn't be Rikers Island over here, where people go and languish for long periods of time without contact from counsel. And I felt so strongly about it that I did talk to the press back in May, because I felt that these people either needed to get a lawyer or they needed to be released from the facility. One of the two, or frankly, that maybe their case should be dismissed until a lawyer can be found to represent them. Instead, we've continued to muddle through and try and recruit private lawyers from farther and farther away. And we've got people from Island County now and Skagit County, I think, and perhaps other places that are taking a few cases, but at present, I'm not sure there's anybody taking cases presently in Superior Court. The two people that were doing most of them have indicated that they've reached capacity and can't take any more cases, and so I'm not sure what the solution is.
Thanks for the answer, and I appreciate it. I always had good representation from your office, but that was a long time ago, and I'm sorry for the challenges you're having. Thanks.
Executive Sadhu.
Yeah, I agree with Stark and Maya that the situation they are facing is dire. But at the same time, I don't want to, this is not the forum to discuss budgets and things, but I just want for everybody's knowledge that in 2020, county prosecutor and defender, they came that ARPA money, we need it because all this backlog, everything, if you look at the council decision, we put in $6 million. They were the first ARPA money was on the criminal justice system. And the request to county council was that this would help to relieve that backlog. Where we are is we didn't relieve anything. The other thing is whatever public defender's office is going through is dependent on county prosecutor's office. Right now, I have a request for 12 new attorneys in addition to ARPA attorneys because that money is going away and we have to put it in our regular budget come in next year. So there is a request for 12 attorneys by the prosecutor's office. There's a request for similar number from the public defender's office. I have a request for 10 additional corrections deputies. If we all know that 60-70% of county's budget is criminal justice system, means the sheriff's office, corrections, prosecutor, judiciary, and public defender. This is not that I have a pleasure of telling people I can give you everything. And I have encouraged every department head, give me your best dream ask. That's the only way I will know what the issues are. It doesn't mean that we have the ability to fulfill everybody's needs, but this particular two departments, prosecutor's department, we have, I don't want to go back to other people's comments and things, but I think that this is a question I am facing. How did we get here? I do not hear clear answers from the prosecutor's office because we are now applying for another additional Superior Court judge in addition to the water adjudication judge. So this is not lack of our efforts or that I'm not think that your needs are significant from the public defender's office, and everything is in the inbox for all the council members for a long time. This is not something that is surprise. Okay, I will just stop here, but I am very aware of the acute situation. This whole thing is become so acute, in last 5-6 years. It has been piling up because first 3 years you don't see that pile up. It started 6 years ago. That pile up starts showing up when it becomes unwieldable, cannot handle it, and now it's still growing.
Mike.
Thank you for the information and for taking the time to be with us today. So I'll be as succinct as possible. Yeah, a little bit about what Executive Sadhu said about how we got here. And Stark, in your comments, I heard in there some kernels of, we're understanding that the private market essentially for some legal services has changed. My question is a little bit more on the throughput. so understand that the hiring environment, maybe what people demand, salaries can change with time. If you had to start, give your best guess as to like throughput, or maybe you have numbers. But I'm curious, in COVID, one of the things this task force has seen is how many different areas got bottlenecked, got slowed, got stopped, creating then very, very large pools of people with various untreated needs. Maybe that be public defense, or treatment in the jail needs, or just needed to be freed. It seemed like everything stopped. But I'm hearing from you that there's more to it than that. That part of it is our overall throughput change, and part of it may be other conditions. Could you comment to the best of your ability on kind of how we got here? And the reason why I ask is hopefully that it can lead us to a pathway of recommendations to change how many people are coming into the system in the first place, or where is the proper place to divert? If we're a task force and to pay attention to this, how can we be most helpful? So I'll stop there.
Thanks for stopping. That's a lot to address. Well, as I've said before to the council, we're just the caboose on the train, and the faster the train goes, the faster we have to go to keep up. So the only thing that's going to change the numbers in my office are the numbers of people that come into the system. Whether they're, if we can lower the crime rate, that's going to reduce the numbers of people that come into the system. If we can divert more people, that's going to reduce the numbers. If we can get the prosecutor's office to decline certain types of cases and send them to municipal courts or to district court, that's going to lower the numbers. I hate to be, when the standards were passed back in 2012, then Director John Komorowski and I looked at each other and said, this is going to turn us into bean counters, and to some extent it has. We have to count these cases, and we have to account for who we assign them to, and what their case weight value is, and all this stuff. It's become tremendously complicated, but at the end of the day, it is just truly and purely a numbers game. And I'm happy with the staff I have, if we can, or even smaller staff, which would make Satball happy if we could get the numbers down. But in this office, we have no control over those numbers. The cases are like the tide; they come in every day, and almost all of the cases that come into the jail are folks that qualify for our representation, and they're sent over here, and we can either take them or we can't. But I have certainly been advocating to anyone who will listen that, for instance, lower level property offenses. I don't know how much you all know about how theft and property type offenses are set up, but they're set up based on monetary value. A theft case under $750 is a misdemeanor. A theft case between $750 and $5,000 is a C felony, and over $5,000 is a B felony. So you've got cases that are generated, let's say, for example, by the Bellingham Police Department, that are, let's say, hypothetically, a $1,200 theft. Well, the prosecutor's office could decide not to file that as a felony, even though it technically is. And because it was generated by the Bellingham Police Department, send it over to Bellingham Municipal Court, or send it to district court and have it treated as a misdemeanor. But for whatever reason, despite comments that seem to be open to that sort of thing, when he was running for election, we have not seen those kind of policies come out of the prosecutor's office. And that is an example of the things that can reduce my numbers. And when my numbers go down, I can comply with standards. It's as simple as that. I also think, though, that COVID fundamentally changed something out there, and maybe it was COVID in connection with the Blake decision. And maybe those two things in combination with the booking restrictions, but we're seeing a lot more really serious cases now than we were prior to 2017. But our numbers of felony filings are about the same as they were before the Blake decision, and think about that for a minute. We were getting 300 to 500 drug cases a year in this office filed at the felony level, that after Blake all went away, yet our numbers are still the same. So something fundamental has changed on the street.
I think you're right, Stark. I think it was unfortunately, it was a perfect storm of many, many things coming together, I believe, that have caused this.
Can I just
go ahead? Yeah.
Just that the offenses Stark's talking about that are more low-level felonies that could be siphoned off in different ways or not filed, that would help our large numbers, but there's still a critical mass of the most serious cases that, there was, I think Stark mentioned this workload study that the American Bar Association published last month, the month before, that says that the public defender workloads are like 3 times what they should be. And, all of our staff have read that report. Every public defender in the state and the nation has read that report, and all are saying, yeah, like me having, Scott's caseload, for instance, of, 11 Class A sex cases pending at once. These are like child molest in the first degree, rape of child, rape at the second degree. These are child sex offenses. These are adult sex offenses. Having 10 plus of those very serious, very high intensity, high workload cases, but also having 90 other cases on top of that is a workload that is, the whole concept that is a reasonable workload is being deconstructed by this workload study, this national workload study. And every public defender in the nation knows it and is like, look, you're asking us to do things do work it's not possible to do successfully. So I think that there's a shift in consciousness there as well that has to be taken into account.
Stephen.
Thanks, Barry. Thanks, Stark and Maya. A couple quick comments, and I'll try to make them succinct, and then I have a factual question. First comment is the caseload limits and conflicts of interest are binary determinations. Stark's office doesn't have any choice about those. Those are mandatory. The discretion exists over on the prosecutor's side. So my second comment is this has been going on for quite a while. A lot of issues of case resolution and case processing have come before the task force. And former administration, new administration, the prosecutor's office is not particularly engaged with the task force on these policy questions. Jack is fond of quoting the Vera report's notation that the biggest effect on reducing or preventing incarceration is at the policy level, and we're not getting some take up by Eric's office on those policy decisions. And I'm a lame duck, so it's not going to be me, but somehow the task force needs to work at having more substantive, open-ended conversations with Eric about these kinds of charging decisions and so forth, because it seems to me it's not in the public defender's office that we can make a lot of advances here. It's in the prosecutor's office. My factual question is for either Stark or Maya. You talk about conflict cases and overage cases. How many of those actually are there? How often do you have a conflict case, or what percentage of time? And similarly, how often do you need to kick out a case for exceeding the caseload standards?
As far as the overage cases are concerned, they have been greatly reduced by the ARPA positions that Satpal referred to. In 2021 and maybe 2020 and 2021, we had overaged well over 200 cases back to assigned counsel each of those years. This year so far, I think it's 43 and last year was similar numbers. So those ARPA positions have made a big difference in terms of the number of overflow or overage cases. Conflict cases remain relatively consistent. There was a change. There was a change in the way conflicts were analyzed in 2017. And now if one lawyer in my office has a conflict, all the lawyers in my office have a conflict. It's an imputed conflict rule. And there were many instances back before that change that this office represented people who frankly would have to be conflicted now because of that rule change. We also were advised by the prosecutor's office to stop representing co-defendants, which is considered a best practice for public defender's office. So if 5 people commit a burglary now, we take one of them and 4 of them go out. So as far as the numbers are concerned, Maya, can you speak to what our conflicts are running year to year?
If I had to give an educated approximation, I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I would say something like 20% of the cases filed end up being conflicts. There's a pretty consistent portion of like, if they're like, we can't represent someone who's a victim in a case who picks up a charge, we send that person out. So there's actually like a pretty long list of ways that conflicts can arise in addition to co-defendants. So I would say around 20%.
I'm looking at an email that I sent Tyler earlier, I guess last week, and it looks like we sent 38 conflicts this year in January, 25 in February, 19 March, 31 April, 23 May, 17 June, 18 July, 29 August, 26 September, and I averaged that out. I threw out the high month and the low month, and the average of the other months is 24 a month. That's at the felony level.
Stark, when you talk about the not trying, like the 5 people that were involved in the same burglary together, you said the prosecutor requested that or it mandated that. What's the strength of that decision?
There's always been a debate about whether an office like this can represent co-defendants, and Maya and I think shortly after she became chief deputy, we actually went down to the Bar Association and addressed this issue with the Council on Public Defense. And while there were no definitive answers necessarily, there is no rule that says you can't represent co-defendants. It is genuinely regarded as best practices not to represent co-defendants because of the potential conflict that's there. One of them decides they want to testify against the other 4 or something like that. So when we were in discussions with the prosecutor's office to develop the case weighting policy, this issue came up, and if memory serves, George Roach did some looking at the issue and basically advised us that we should no longer represent co-defendants. We weren't representing a lot of co-defendants anyway, but we would go through a more contorted analysis about whether there was an actual conflict between co-defendants.
Like current actual adversity, the adversity between people can emerge. One of the difficulties is if we have 2 people and we're working towards a trial track, and then the day before trial, one co-defendant says, you know what, I'm going to say this person was responsible and it's our other client, then they both have to go out the day before trial. So then you've doubled the number of conflicts you had to send out, and it was done when everything's ready to roll. So it's like I don't think any public defender office in the state represents co-defendants. Some have really strict rules about it, stricter than us, about even if someone was a former victim, they do not, in a case, they don't represent the person, but we do. So, we make judgment calls on policies that we think.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there was any compromise position that could be reached on specific cases where it could be allowed in certain circumstances.
When conflicts are brought to my attention and the conflict is arguable, I do whatever I can to hang on to the case. And I've even made decisions on conflicts that my lawyers haven't agreed with, that they then take to a judge to get a judge to let them off a case because they don't agree with my conclusion. A perfect example of this, by the way, is what's going on in this election interference trial in Georgia with Trump, where you've got all these co-defendants that on the eve of trial are flipping and agreeing to testify against various other ones. And that's exactly what happens in co-defendant cases, is as trial approach, one or more of them decide to flip. And if we happen to be representing the same, the people who flip and the people who are being flipped against, it creates a problem. It causes trials to be continued. And, and in some cases, we even then have to get rid of both of the people.
Yeah. Yeah. That Georgia case is quite the case study in this, I guess. Anyway, anything else for Stark and Maya?
Again, thanks for making time to hear, and I appreciate you all.
Sure. Thanks for being here. Raylene, did you?
Thank you. Sorry, I had a question, and I don't know. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm listening. I'm almost back to my office in Blaine, but as Stark said that Dave is soon retiring, I went to go and check things out. So Maya and Stark, you're scaring me because I'm going to start on Monday to help out on this situation by taking one of Dave's roles. So as you're talking, I know Maya, you mentioned the body cams as well as Stark did in previous meetings. I guess my question is, one, is there any way to alleviate that? I mean, the state mandates to have body cams is excellent because we want transparency out there. But what these legislative mandates did, they also create a backlog of cases because of the time constraints that it takes to review all of this. So I guess one of my questions for you would be, is one, do you have the program with Axon that you guys can download them quicker and have easier access? Because there is something that could help with defense counsel getting those videos faster if you don't have that program.
We do have Axon. We do.
Raylene, I'm going to let Maya field your questions because I've just been notified that my case is being called in court, so I have to jump out.
All right. Excellent. Thanks, Maya.
Thanks, Stark. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have Axon. So we like the prosecutor's office essentially drops video discovery into our separate Axon account.
Okay. And so you're not having to wait to download them.
Oh, it took a while to get that, but we have that now, and so we can get access to them. Yes.
Okay. So then on the second note of that, do you have enough staff to review that would more staff to review the videos help the attorneys that are there?
Different attorneys handle it differently. I mean, there's some amount of video that can be reviewed by an investigator. And we do that. We have one investigator for every 4 attorneys. But there's legal issue spotting that has to be done while videos are watched. Sometimes, like, maybe an investigator can say, these are the portions in the video that have actual action, so that you're not sitting there listening, watching the police officer drive up to the scene or whatever. Like, you can get sort of more fragmented portions to watch, but we can't have an investigator, non-lawyer, watching an interaction to determine whether there's a Fourth Amendment violation. I mean, that's really that's the lawyer's work to do that. And we can, to some extent, use investigators to say, well, these are duplicate. There's 3 body cams, but they're all showing the same thing just from different camera perspectives. except the problem is then one officer walks away and starts chatting with someone and makes statements that are relevant. So it's like, we're trying to be as efficient as possible with the review of it, but it's just going from 0 to 1,000, right? So, and we're developing, but our investigators are also doing a lot of other things too. So it's
I understand. I feel for you, and I know that this isn't like this is going to fix everything, because it's a huge problem. And this is just one little snippet. I'm just trying to look to see if there are other ways we can solve some of the issues. So that was one thought.
Axon is decent technology, but for instance, it costs more money to get transcripts. And that's something we have to be careful of with our budget. And the transcripts aren't always accurate, actually. They're not, the technology isn't that great. So it has its limits, yeah. So thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Stephen.
Yeah, I wanted Maya, and I'm glad Stark joined, to present, because as I said, I thought this was something we ought to know about. I think from a steering committee perspective, since we sort of vet things and send them up to the task force, I guess I wonder, number one, is this something that we want to have the whole task force understand is going on as a conundrum in the system? And is it something that we think we might have something we want to say about it? I understand, Satpal's trying to juggle competing budget requests, and there are inflexible demands on the public defender's office, and it's a three-way negotiation between the PD and the prosecutor and the court system. There are all sorts of complexities to this, so I don't know if it's anything for the task force to try to do anything about, but I feel obliged to ask those questions. Should this go before the task force? Should we think about a possible recommendation on this?
Jill?
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, Maya, but I believe the steering committee discussed this last month, and it was agreed to schedule this topic at the December task force meeting. So I do have it queued up for next month for the full task force.
Thanks, Jill. Will you remind me of the date of that? Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for reminding me, Jill.
Sure. Next month is December 18th for the full task force meeting.
Jack?
I was basically going to say I thought we had agreed to, and I think it's a good idea to talk about it, but that's been resolved. Thanks.
Mike?
100% agree. I raised my hand to bring up an aspect that whatever systems clog, slow down, are ineffective, staff are getting stressed, it is under those times that systems tend to have some of their worst disparate impacts. And as Whatcom County has bravely entered into the concept of racial equity and racial justice and joined GARE, I would just like us to keep in mind that obviously everybody's affected, right, by these things, but it's quite often the most indigent or persons of color, and because they're disproportionately jailed and arrested in the first place, they're going to be disproportionately impacted by any slowdown in the system, whether that be from public defense or in prosecution. And one thing that's been challenging, I think, the whole time I've served in the task force sometimes is data regarding this. This is not a slam on anybody, and this is not a critique. This is really just an onus on all of us to understand fully when we do have these issues, capacity issues, burnout issues, people leaving issues, people being affected, to always center folks of color, their families, and their communities, because they're highly likely, research tells us, to be even more heavily impacted. So I think as we go through an understanding about it, I would like to be able to know a little bit more about that. And I think that comes from data and knowing the data of the people that are moving through our system. And I think that would be an important facet. And I would encourage us as a task force, whenever we have a discussion about people being impacted by system stoppages, slowdowns, challenges, that we always center that. And even if we don't know what the particular answer is, that we at least ask ourselves that tough question. And then we can always answer with, we don't know, we need to do better on data. But I know sometimes I haven't always been consistent on asking those questions, but I just want to make sure that publicly we state that we reassert the value, but that we also take on the onus to try to do better when it comes to just acknowledging that. And thank you.
Yeah, thanks for keeping that front and center for us, Mike. I appreciate that. All right, let's move on to our next item, which is the IPTRF leadership changes. And I think Stephen wanted to lead us through this one. Stephen? You're muted.
Okay. I'm not sure what leadership will look like in this, but I circulated, I think at the last meeting, Maya said in terms of considering possible co-chair candidates, it would be helpful to have a quote unquote job description. I had a conversation with Mike as well, and he made the same observation of the helpfulness of that. So I circulated what I would call a very rough draft or just an idea, trying to jot down some parameters for what these positions would look like. I didn't run it by Jack first, so he would be the first person I'd look to see his thoughts on its accuracy and completeness. But I just offer that up as a way to try to push us forward in thinking about how we're going to fill the leadership of the task force, which is a pretty multifaceted task, ranging from fairly straightforward facilitation of meetings to guardians of the process that we use in committees and in the task force, to involvement on the substantive committee work as we go forward. And then adding on, perhaps in 2024 and beyond, work with the implementation plan that is coming to the vote next month.
Next week.
Next week. That's right. It's this month.
It's this month. Yep. Jack.
Well, I didn't want to scare people, so I said 10 hours a month. I think Stephen said 20. But what I would say, I've been doing this since we started. Initially, it was a lot with Joe and I and sorting things out. Then there was a period it was kind of quiet. Then for about a year and a half, there was nothing because of COVID. I mean, it was really mellow. Now, that's not necessarily good, but and then when we got into the jail plan with Barry, we were, I don't know, Barry, I was with you 4 or 5 hours a week, every week, and stuff outside of that.
Yeah.
What I would say, though, if someone's interested, I think there is room, particularly with a co-chair, for one person to do more than the other. Stephen's done in the last year at times more than me because of my schedule. So I think when you have that discussion and work that out, I think there is a place. Like, I don't think there's an absolute template that you have to do 20 hours a month or whatever it is. This is the kind of work, like so much of good work, that you could, if I were retired, I could do 20 hours a week of this. I could do everything. And so I think if someone knows their limits and what they can do, it is an opportunity to make a difference. But I hope the time commitment doesn't scare people too much, because I think there is some minimal time commitment for sure. You have to do that and be organized, but there is opportunity to share that and tailor it to your life and your goals. Thanks.
Yeah, and thank you, Stephen, for putting this together. I think it's important not only just for folks that may want to apply, but for those of us that will be making the decision to vote on those leadership positions. So it's going to be really valuable going forward.
Yeah, Barry, I would just emphasize that I think what I put together was mostly descriptive in a retrospective way. It's sort of things that Jack and I have done. I think there's flexibility the task force could take, and how you parse out responsibility for certain tasks and so forth. So there's some room for creativity and reconfiguration there. I'd be remiss to say that in terms of the organizational oversight, we are incredibly fortunate to have people of the caliber of Jill and now Jenna doing some of the backroom organizing and keeping track of things. That's probably the 400th time Jill's reminded me that we've actually already talked about something I'm urging us to talk about. So those two are incredible resources for the co-chairs going forward also.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Anybody else have any comments on the kind of the job description that Stephen put together and how we can use it? Okay, I guess we'll roll into the, oh, go ahead, Raylene.
Sorry, I just I got back from phone to computer and transitioning here. Yep. I really appreciate what Stephen did and wanted to thank him. One thing that I just brought up with Stephanie Kraft, who's taking the other half of the role of Dave Reynolds, is that she might want to be involved in at least some of the legal injustices. We're learning the division and the separation of a role in the county, but she's taking the judicial administrator role in Superior Court. And so to get some different aspects and knowledge of the committees, it'd be good for everybody to understand the different roles that we're taking on as things changed in the county and Superior Court. Thanks.
Mike?
3 quick things. The first is a thank you to Stephen for the time and thought to put into that. I think quite frequently we're missing those pieces of information. I think it's very helpful. 2, after reviewing it briefly, I want to urge us to consider, and those that make budgetary decisions, that we consider how important this is and that maybe we need to pay for at least part of this facilitation. As Jack mentioned, they don't have to be 100% equal, the co-chairs. I think having 2 is extraordinarily valuable. You 2 have both been amazing in that role. And I think this has been said before. I just want to underscore Waha did it for a time, and there could be value in, especially as we're coming up so close to a what could be a leadership vacuum. The third is a really granular piece of information to Jill Nixon. Jill, for folks that are interested in applying, is it most appropriate to send them to you directly or do you want people going to the website? How are we doing that? I had a conversation with Brian Estes, who's on our behavioral health subcommittee, who's talking with some folks out at Lummi Nation. And obviously we want warm welcome to people that are interested in joining us. And I'm just wondering if you might comment in this meeting, how would you like us to send prospective members?
So to be clear, now you're asking about recruiting for new membership.
That's correct.
Not
talking about leadership, talking about, yeah. And they may become leaders, that could be fine, but I'm really talking about membership. Yep.
Okay, great. So all they need to do is go to the county website. All the boards and commissions vacancies will be published probably in the next couple weeks. And there'll be an announcement in the newspaper, that kind of thing. Really, all anyone has to do is submit an application online. So,
and they can do that anytime. You said
they can do that anytime.
There's something to be posted. That means updates. There are already vacant positions that people can apply for. Is that correct?
On the task force, no, but yes, the county maintains a current vacancy list for all of its boards and commissions. And I will update that list with the annual vacancies right around Thanksgiving. So it will include all of the vacancies. Everyone's terms end on January 31st, right? So we start advertising for those vacancies end of November, early December, and we'll collect applications until, I think this year it's January 2nd. And then council will spend its January meetings making appointments to terms that will then begin February 1st.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Jill, how many?
So I think what I understood though, Jill, just to make sure that my understanding is right, because you gave me a lot of details and I appreciate them all, but that somebody could submit an application now.
Yes. Our county applications are always available on the website if they want to get a jump start. That just helps me out. So yeah, they can go there now. And helpful. I think what I'll do, I'm going to make a note to put together some specific instructions on how to apply, send that out to all of the task force members and say, here's the information. If you have anyone who wants to apply, please just forward this information on how they can do that.
Oh, that would be so wonderful. And I think that addresses the other piece about the warm welcome. I think it's great to be able to direct people to a website, but I love the deputization of task force members and making sure that our membership is replete and that it's full. And I took that charge seriously. I've got somebody I want to bring. I'm not just asking. I've got somebody to replace Greg Winter. So I want to be able to do that, and I want to be able to send them. And the other piece might just be a suggestion, and I'm not sure it's to you, and this is obviously beyond the scope of the task force, but increasing that window a little bit. I think recruitment can be challenging. I have not done this much, and I can tell you in my little bit of trying to recruit for membership, it takes some time. It takes time to warm people up. I think the work of Pyramid is going to help get that stuff out there. There'll be more understanding, but I am finding a little bit of it's necessary to orientate people to the work of the task force, why it's valuable, what the time commitments are. So I would just echo that Stephen's job description is really helpful, but I think the more that we can do to make that process easier, and if we can elongate an application period, for example, give people more time. I'm finding people with very busy schedules who would be ideal for this, but they need time to consider and time to get exposed to it. So that's not necessarily directed at you. That's really more broadly at the way we staff and populate our boards and commissions to make sure that we're giving community who may need time, who may need information, who may want to sit down in an orientation meeting, everything that they need to do to come on board. And Jill, thank you for everything you do for this committee and for me personally as a subcommittee chair. I really appreciate it. You can always kind of clearly break through some of the muddle. And so I appreciate that about you. Thank you.
Well, so Mike, I had the same thought about some sort of orientation or a IPTRF 101 or something that could be up on the website when people go to both apply, and then once they get into the task force itself, maybe even a more detailed orientation that would get them on board. How many are we onboarding next year, Jill?
I believe we're onboarding 4, but I would need to check my list to do that, and I see we're running short on time. So
yeah, we are. Okay,
I'll find out.
Stephen?
Yeah, I would just say I drew up my job description for co-chair. I think that would be pretty daunting and would not recommend we use that to try to recruit new members.
No.
Okay, good. I just wanted us to all be clear on that. I have 2 factual questions.
Have them call me, Stephen, if you want this.
Oh, okay, Jack, I'll do that. when will the council vote on appointments and notify people? And do we vote on the new co-chairs at the January meeting, or will the new body vote in the February meeting?
Council will appoint at the first meeting in January. I don't have the date on the tip of my fingers. They could hold it over to the second meeting if there's questions. Stephen and Jack, just a reminder, you guys are on the hook through January. So February 1st will be elections for new chairs.
January 9th is that first council meeting. Anything else on, it looks like we rolled right into membership from leadership. So we covered 2 of those agenda items. I think next was the annual report, Jill.
Yes, thank you. This one is something I've had a lot of time to spend on, so I've made it incredibly brief. I emailed it around. It's on the task force website. Please take a look at it. I won't go through it here. It's simply a recitation of some of the major themes that the task force has been dealing with for the past 6 months. If I've missed any major topics, please let me know, and I'm happy to include it. I will just let you know that we're not going to get incredibly granular here because there's just not enough time.
Okay, Jack?
2 comments. Post, I know we don't talk about ballot measures here, but it may be appropriate to add a paragraph that reflects whatever the ballot measure outcome is once we have that, because this report will be after that.
Yeah. And
I also didn't know, I might think it's more important than it is, but it may be appropriate to address somehow we tried to address the leadership thing of not having the staggering. I think mentioning there would be turnover in that report's appropriate. Those are the two. And it looked great, Jill. I thought it was perfect. Those are the only two things that occur to me that might make it a little better.
Yeah, I thought I included both of those topics, Jack, but if they weren't to your satisfaction, let's connect later and I can make sure to get that in.
I probably skimmed too quick because I looked at it this morning.
No problem.
All right, thanks.
Okay, that brings us to other business. Is there anything else anybody wants to discuss? Seeing no one, we'll go to our public comment period. I will read this into the record first. Per RCW 42.17A.555, the use of public facilities to support or oppose candidates or ballot issues is prohibited. Members of the public and the legislative body are not allowed to speak in support of or in opposition to a ballot measure or individual candidacy during an open public meeting. Please refrain from raising campaign issues when addressing the council. And this would be the steering committee. So we would ask that you don't talk about the ballot measure, but we would welcome other comments. And with that, Jill, is there anyone out there that would like to speak?
Yes, thank you. Just right quick, first, if Mike and Dan can stay after, that would be great to figure out the November agenda for the Behavioral Health Committee. We do have one attendee today, Jason. Welcome, and go ahead and speak.
Good afternoon, folks. Jason Forrest, Maya and Mark. All you guys are overwhelmed.
We're having a really hard. We're having a hard time hearing you, Jason. You're breaking up terribly bad. Oh, that's worse.
Nope.
That's that's still worse.
I apologize. Looks like I'm out of service.
Well, now
okay.
you're working. You're working now.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna do the
Nope, now we lost you.
Hey, Jason, Jill here. Can you, if you can hear me, if we can't get your audio to work, feel free to send me your comments in an email to the group, and I'm happy to forward it on to them after the meeting. How's that?
It'd be awesome. That sounds great. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm so sorry we couldn't hear you today.
Yeah, and thanks for hanging with us for this meeting, Jason. We appreciate your wanting to be involved and be with us today. Thank you. All right. With that, everybody, I think that's the end of the agenda, and it's 2 minutes early. I'll give you 2 minutes back to eat a peanut butter sandwich. So we're adjourned.
Thanks, Barry. Good job. You're right on the wire.